See a beautiful crowd, and thank you for all who are tuning in online. Tonight we're doing a special edition of a satellite Lighthouse Project class. Since normally Lighthouse Project is on Wednesday nights, but since tomorrow night there is an amazing speaker by Manis Friedman who's going to be speaking at the Lighthouse Project, we are doing it here live in Hollywood at Aisha Torah Tuesday night. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us and tuning in online. Tonight's class is going to be for the speedy recovery, the refuah shlema of Mrs. Rachel Bat Mazal Mawardi. It's a mother of a close friend of the community, and she needs a quick refuah shlema, so if anyone could have in their prayers Rachel Bat Mazal, and as well as all of the fascinating Torah concepts and chidushim we're going to learn tonight should all go to strengthen her and give her a complete refuah shlema and a miracle B'ezrat Hashem that we're going to see. Amen. So we are right in the middle of the action. These are amongst our favorite parashas, the 10 plagues. And the Torah takes a break between last week and this week between the plagues. We have 7 plagues last week. We have the final 3 this week to make it a complete knockout to Paro and to Egypt. And as our commentaries say, they well deserved all of what they got. And we're going to delve deep into those concepts this evening. I saw a fascinating midrash. Rashi quotes a part of it in last week's Torah portion. It is from the Midrash Tanchuma. There are many different types of midrashim, but this one is actually nice. It says, if you look at the plagues, they're obviously not by chance. They are divinely chosen and handpicked for each and every one. But not only was each one handpicked, and as we learned last week, it was tit for tat, it was measure for measure, that they deserved exactly what they got paid back for. But more than that, the order that the plagues actually happened in was a specific order, the same order that an army would go and wage war and beat another city or country with, and listen to the order. So the first plague, being dam, blood, actually attacks their water supply. And so too, at war, one of the first things to do is to either cut or to damage the opponent's water supply. That's number one. Number 2 is you make a lot of noise, whether it's from trumpets or shofars, or even the banging of the, the swords on their shields, and the horses jumping up and down. That is the noise of the tzfardea, the frogs. That's the second plague. The next plague is, the next tactic, the next war tactic a king would do is to shoot arrows, bow and arrows. And that's what the next plague, that was the lice. The lice came down and they were biting and pinching all of the Egyptians like arrows penetrating into their skin. That's the third. The next is wild animals, and that is also what an army will do. They'll send in guard dogs or watch dogs or wolves or different types of animals to go attack. That's the fourth plague of wild animals. Then they're going to find a way to spread a plague or an epidemic to get as many people in the city they're conquering sick. That was the 5th plague. The 6th one, just looking, is they would spray kerosene, neft as we say in Hebrew, in whatever which way they were able to do. And that would be compared to the boils that the Egyptians endured on their skin, suffering those burns on their skin, as if someone would have kerosene, lo alenu, sprayed all over them. The 7th is that they would either shoot small rocks, right, with slings, or bigger ones, or boulders, and that is likened to the hail. That's the 7th plague. The 8th would be to draw out and map out the boundaries very clearly, and then infiltrate and get in on them. That was the plague of locust, which the locusts were exactly to the borders of Egypt, and it outlined Egypt. Egypt had all the locusts, and right outside of it, like I've been once in a plane, and you look on one side and it's sunny and beautiful, and the other side is cloudy and rainy. So imagine that exact phenomenon in Egypt. So that was the 8th plague. The 9th plague is that they would now finally enter the land, and they would incarcerate and put all the enemies in jail. That was likened to darkness. The second 3 days of darkness were so thick the Egyptians were bound and not able to move. And the 10th plague is or the 10th tactic a king would use is they would kill the leaders or kill the important people, and that is the death of the firstborn. So the exact sequence in the way war tactics and rulership tactics to take over another country are done is the exact same way God came in and infiltrated and took over the land of Egypt. I thought that was something nice to, as an opening remark, to get into the 10 plagues. This week, as we said, we're going through the last plagues, the 3 plagues. Right off the bat, the Torah tells us that God tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and give him a warning for the upcoming 7th plague. However, many of us understand the Hebrew language, and the word the Torah uses is not go to Pharaoh. Listen to what it says. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, bo el Paro. It means, bo means come. Come to Paro. God's telling Moses, come to Paro, when he really is telling him to go to Paro.
Yeah.
How would you say go in Hebrew? You'd say lech. Go. No, but God says go by saying the word come to Paro. That's a very interesting phenomenon. There are multiple answers. The Baal HaTurim gives 2 answers, and then I want to share an even deeper answer. The Baal HaTurim, the famous answer is bo, is the numerical value of 3. Bet is 2, Aleph is 1. So God is telling him, this is the beginning of the Parsha, you are now going to bring Pharaoh his final 3 plagues. Okay, that's one nice one. Another one answer he gives is, whenever God, and we see this even in the previous parasha, whenever God is telling Moses in the terminology of lech, to go, it means go to Pharaoh when he's swimming in the Nile, relieving himself. As we said, he thought of himself as a god. He considered himself a god. His trick was he would eat all day, drink all day. He never went to the bathroom. Whoa, he's so amazing, everyone said. Yeah, but Moshe knew the truth. God knew the truth, that he used to go every morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, he'd have his little swim in the Nile where he would do his business. So lech, whenever the Torah uses the terminology, God telling Moses, lech, go, that's go to the Nile River on his morning swim. Bo means go to his palace. God is telling Moses, go right into his palace, because now we're going to finish him off together. I saw a commentary in the Chumash called the Avi Ezri. Very interesting answer he gives to why it's Bo El Paro. If you think of it, and this is going to lead us into our topic of the night, the topic of free will, because it's something we all came out to listen to about. Is God tangible? Is God somewhere? Everyone knows the children's song, right? Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Hashem is everywhere, right? But he's here, he's there, he's nowhere. Where is he? Can I hold him? No. So when God says to go or to come, is there any difference in relation to God? Absolutely not. He's not a being, he's not a figure. So God is telling Moses, firstly, there's no difference where you are. It doesn't make you physically, wherever you are by the Nile, you are in Pharaoh's palace, you are away, you are by the Jewish people. Physically, wherever you are, it doesn't make you closer or further away from God. Look how amazing that is. You know what gets you closer or further away from God? Is when you connect to Him. It's when you think about Him. When you transcend into that opening of that facet of understanding God, of believing in God, in talking to God, that's what gets you either closer or further away from God. So God tells God tells Moses, Moses, let's go, but let's go together. Come with me, Bo El Paro. Let's come together to Paro to give him his final 3 plagues. And that is the reason for the terminology of Bo El Paro, come to Paro instead of go to Paro. The Midrash tells us that the first 5 plagues that God brought upon Egypt, Paro had a stubborn enough heart that he hardened his own heart. Okay? But the final 5 plagues, the second round of plagues, God actually hardened Paro's heart. It's evident from the verses, it's evident from the Midrash as well as the commentaries that it was God who was the one who made Paro stubborn, who made his heart more stubborn. There's a famous joke and said if Paro would have been Jewish, he would have been able to harden his heart to all 10 plagues. But thank God he was only Egyptian and he only had 5 that he hardened his own heart and 5 that God hardened. But that is something very, very questionable. How does he harden his own heart? And then how does God then switch to harden his heart? But before we attack that whole free will question, which again is what we're going to do, if we look in the Torah, right at the first verse, God tells us that he is doing all of this to harden his heart. And I'm going to read the rest of the pasuk I already started. So God tells to Moses to come, i.e. go to Paro. Ki ani chbadti et libo ve'et lev avadav. Because I, God said, have hardened his heart and the hearts of his slaves and servants, advisors, and all of Egypt. Leman shiti ototai ele bikirbo, in order that I can instill all of my power and all of these signs into his midst, into his innards, bikirbo. Really hit it home, get him a home run to understand who I am. The Zera Shimshon asks, this is not the first time God hardens his heart. We are now warning after the 6th plague, after the 7th plague, the plague of hail, before the 8th plague, the plague of locust. God already has hardened Paro's heart twice before, by number 6 and number 7. Why now, after the 7th, is God explicitly saying that he is hardening his heart and for a certain reason? We don't see this not before, after any other of the plagues, only after the 7th, meaning after the hail, and before the locust. It's a valid question. Again, even though the Midrash says it's 5, and then 5 he hardened on himself, but why does the Torah have to go and tell us why God is doing it? Rashi tells us something about the plague of hail, whether everything was obliterated and destroyed besides for just wheat stalks and grain stalks, or if there was some grass left. The verse the Torah uses, I'm going to open it up, says as follows. והפשתה והשעורה לא נוקתה, כי השעורה אביב הפשתה גבעול, והחיטה והקוסמת לא נוקו, כי אפילות הנה. However, wheat and spelt were not destroyed by all of the hail that came down because they are very loose and they're not stiff. Okay? Rashi has 2 interpretations. One interpretation is, he said, that those are the only food grains and stalks which stayed, but there was also grass and other flowers or things which were not edible that stayed. But then Rashi has a deeper interpretation, and he says that every single piece of vegetation was destroyed by the hail except for these 2. And the reason why these 2 is because they were very soft and unripened and unaffected by the boulders. But then he goes on to say in his second interpretation that it was actually a miracle that these things were not destroyed. They should have been destroyed, but it was a miracle from God that it wasn't destroyed. Comes there Shimshon and says, according to that God makes a miracle for those 2, why did he have to make a miracle that the wheat and the spelt stalks were not destroyed? If you want to come and say because God needs to bring 10 plagues on the Jewish people, so let him just let the hail destroy all the vegetation and bring a different type of plague. But if you're telling me that there is a certain reason, well, what is the reason why those 2 had to stay alive? Why they would not have to be destroyed? Now listen to the Chidush. Paro was looking in every opportunity for an excuse to not believe in God. I mean, he already admitted that God is a tzaddik and me and my nation are evil. So he's admitted to it, but he's retracting. Because you know what he saw now? Listen to how beautiful the Zera Shimshon answers. He told Moses, pray to God for us that the hail will stop. So God answers Moses' prayer. Do you know what happened? Paro goes out to the fields and he sees, and he's expecting everything to be destroyed, but he sees that the wheat and the spelt stalks are still live and kicking. He's like, that's amazing. We really didn't get a plague. And then he looks up in the sky, and the hail which started to fall, but by the time the plague, expired, they held themselves in the air. They stopped. So Paro looks at this and he says, God is not almighty and powerful. You know why? Because he has to follow a rule of olam, chesed yibaneh, that the world is always built through mercy and compassion. And when God brings his wrath and his judgment, he has to incorporate some mercy and some love in it as well. So Paro's saying God's not all powerful. If he was so powerful, he would have destroyed everything with the hail. But look, he left some over, and he got some stuck in the sky. He had to mix in some of the rachamim, some of the compassion in the deen. Paro looks at that and says, God's weak. Chas v'shalom. He's saying God could not have done it. And that's why the Ze'er Shimshon says, you know what God did? God opened this trap for Paro. He opened him to think, oh look, maybe you're going to find an excuse now because I left some. You know, it's like, God forbid, when someone's house burns down and there was one thing that was left behind. So the positive thing to do is at least that's there. Right? But here, in the complete opposite, Paro sees everything. He sees his whole country burning down. Instead of being thankful for something left, he says, God couldn't have done it all. He couldn't have destroyed everything. So God set him up for that specifically. He wasn't going to take everything, but he was going to take it in two steps. Most of it by the hail and the rest by the locust. After the locust came, there was absolutely nothing left to eat. There was no vegetation. Again, it was all by the Jews. Yet again, just like the blood with the water, all over again. So this is how the Ze'er Shimshon answers. You know why God is telling us right now? Because I'm here to he said over here, Ki ani chbadti et libo v'et levav adav. I'm here to strengthen his heart. I'm here to teach them a lesson, because this time out of all times, he set Paro up for a trap. And that trap was only because the hail didn't destroy every part of vegetation. According to this, and according to this concept that his heart is being hardened and he's being stubborn and that's being inflicted upon by God, the Ze'er Shimshon says, what's the point of God sending Moses to warn Paro if he's going to harden his heart anyways? It's like he's wasting Moses' time. Moses, go and ask him to set the people go free. God tells Moses to go, and then on the same side, God makes Paro say no. How does that work? He's setting him up for failure. It's almost like it was a rhetorical question, because by now we knew what it was going to be. And based on that, our question of the evening is, how can God now enter Paro, enter his mind, enter his heart, and force him and harden his heart? Isn't that controlling him? Isn't that changing his course of thought, his free will? Many commentaries grapple with this. Tonight we're going to present two distinct answers from the Ze'er Shimshon, Zechuto Yagen Aleinu. May his merit come and be upon all of us for understanding these deep concepts. Listen to his first answer. His first answer was, take a step back. Why are all of these plagues being brought upon Paro and Egypt? And what's their purpose? Their purpose is for Paro to recognize and know who God is. Because that's what it was from the beginning. Moses comes and says, let God's people go. Paro says, I don't know who that God is. 1 second, let me open up my book. No, he's not in my textbook, I'm sorry. We've got thousands of gods, but not this one. I don't know that name. I don't know that identity. Oh, and he knew who he was, but he was making it convenient for himself. So God's whole purpose in these plagues was, we're going to get the Jewish people out. They're leaving. But they're going to leave only once you recognize and understand who I am, God says. Based on that, God wanted Pharaoh to free the Jewish people either before the plague came, meaning after he was warned, or during when the plague was happening. He says if you pay attention to all of the times that God hardens Pharaoh's heart, it's always after a plague. Why? Because after he got whipped into shape, it's so easy for him to say, just get out of here. No, that's not what God wanted. God didn't want him to just get rid of this bad dream. No, God wanted him to understand this bad dream. God wanted him to understand the reality of God's power and who he was and how wrong he was for torturing his children. So the Zer Shimshon's first answer is, it's not that God was tampering with his heart or messing with his free will. Is that God was looking for something specific by Pharaoh. Either to admit to who God is and recognize him by the warning, or at least in the middle of the plague, but not after it's done. After it's done, it's so easy to give up. That's his first answer. His second answer is different. His second answer, he quotes the Talmud. The Talmud in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 100, says that God supplies wicked people, Rishaim, with strength, extra strength, to endure the pain in Gehinnom, the suffering and punishment that they will receive in hell. Can you imagine? Based on that, it's a very scary piece of Talmud. We're not going to go too into that right now. But the Zer Shimshon says, based on that, you know what God was doing? God wasn't hardening Pharaoh's heart, as the Torah says. God was giving power to Pharaoh to withstand and endure the plagues. The first 5 plagues, as severe as they were pretty simple. That was like elementary level, entry level. The second 5 plagues were like double black diamond for the skiers on an icy day, on a rainy day, on a foggy day. Very, very hard. God did that in order to teach him a lesson. God did it in order for the Jewish people to see. But God also took this wicked man, just like he takes the Rishaim, and gave him extra strength in order to endure all of that suffering and not give up out of pain. Because they were much more painful, the next ones. Not to give up out of pain, rather to give up, to submit to God out of recognizing and understanding who God is. And that's why he explains this was not called a messing up of Pharaoh's free will. It was rather giving him the extra strength to take the physical pain. This was not even an emotional battle at this point. This is not even an ego battle at this point. Because according to this, Pharaoh would have given up after the 5th or by the 6th plague. God gave him extra strength so he doesn't cave in just because of the physical torture. Rather, he caves in and he submits to God out of the true recognition and understanding of who God is. And this is how the Zer Shimshon answers how God never tampered with Pharaoh's free will. According to this, if we now come to the conclusion that God did not take control of Pharaoh and he left Pharaoh make his own decisions and have his own free will, after everything that went through with Pharaoh, the conclusion is all the more so for us. Today, we understand that we have free will. We have the choice to say a nice word to someone, to make a smile, to give someone a look, to speak nasty about someone, to give someone something, to steal something from someone, to lie, to cheat. Many, 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 many things. We have the choice. We have the choice when our husband comes in the house to put on a smile and say hello. Or we have the choice to, when we walk in after work, to dump all of our dirty laundry on our wife and scream at her and get angry at her and at the kids, because we've got all the reasons to. And sometimes the wife has all the reasons to. But we have the free will to choose what we do, how we do it, and when we do it. If Paro had free will, so do we. What happens is that God, He helps us. He lets us choose which track we want to put our train on. And once we start moving, God adds to the velocity. He helps us go in a stronger way. That's a good thing. Could be a great thing. Could be a horrible thing. Because if you choose the wrong road, if you get on the wrong track, then unfortunately that strength is going to bring you in the wrong way. We choose where we go. The Talmud says, B'derech sh'adam holech molichin oto. Whatever choice, whatever path you take, you're brought along. God, others, encouraged. We make our fate. We make our future. We have free will. But we have to use it. We have to make the right choices. We learned from Paro that he made the wrong choices in the beginning. And then God continued with those choices. Based on the two interpretations we gave. They're similar in the fact, they're different, but they're similar. The concept is Paro chose a direction. It was the wrong one. It was the stubborn one. And it led him down the wrong path. Think in your life. Take a step back. Especially for us Sephardic men. No coughs needed. For the Sephardic men. For all men. And for the women too. How many times were we stubborn in our lives and we just were stubborn. It's like hitting your head on the wall over and over and over. And that stubbornness unfortunately led to a loss in relationship, a loss in business opportunity, a loss in happiness, a loss in traveling. There's so many different things that it could have been detrimental to. Why? Because the way we like to be is, this is my path, this is what I chose, I'm going to drive it down to the grave. Whether I win or lose, it's over. That mentality is the Paro mentality. That mentality is the anti-Torah mentality. The Torah tells us, you want to know who's someone who's smart, you want to know someone who's brave, who's strong, who makes the right decisions, they're able to admit that they got on the wrong path. They put their train on the wrong railroad. They pick it up even though they're a couple stops down the line, and they pick up and they go on the right one. This happens in relationships between husbands and wives, between parents and children, between brothers and sisters and sisters and brothers, at work, at school, in your neighborhood, in your community. This is something which is reoccurring. If you think of it, those who are most successful are those who are able to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm wrong. You know what, maybe I need to do something different. It's one of the hardest things to do. Paro was on the spotlight. Oh, he was. And his ego got the better side of him. But once he was so deep into it, God couldn't even let him get out. God couldn't let him get out because he had to make a point. He wanted him to understand who God was and not submit through physical pain or just out of giving up because it was after the plague. No, he wanted something sincere. That is also something we have to know about admitting. If you want to admit, if you want to say sorry, you have to be sincere. How many times has your spouse told you this and this and this and this, and you were stubborn and you didn't say anything until finally, okay, I'm sorry. And then he or she looks at you and said, no, you're not. Because they know when you are and they know when you're not. You know when you are? You know when they know that you're really sorry? You come with a bouquet. You come with a note. You bring some chocolates. You take them out to the restaurant. Those sound like things that men need to do for their wives, right? But when it's sincere, it's really forgivable. When it's not, it's fake. God didn't want Paro to give a fake apology or to give a fake recognition. Don't we see the parallel with our own lives? Do you want to be as similar as possible to Paro? Or do you want to be as similar as possible to Moses, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to the children of God? It's our decision going back. It's our own free will. We have the choice to pick up that cell phone and send that nice text, and send that beautiful text, or send that nasty one. We have the choice to call up and say sorry, say I apologize, or say I'm only human and I could have made a mistake. Maybe we got in this tangle together. Let's see how we could put stuff back together. Or maybe not. We make those choices. And when we realize that based on the choice we make, we are either putting on the Paro mask and the Paro identity, or we are putting on the Jewish identity, that which the Torah wants from us. When we start thinking like this, and we start thinking, how sincere can I be? How mature can I be to realize that I took the wrong path? How mature can it be that I've invested so much time and effort and money into traveling in the wrong direction? How many people go into business and it's 1,000, and it's 10,000, and 100,000, and 200,000, and 500,000? There's a certain point where a person needs to know how to cut their losses. Now, every businessman has their own tactic. Some will never give up. It could be a matter of pride. They won't say it's a matter of pride. It's a matter of riding the wave. And you know what? Sometimes they're right. Sometimes not. In relationships, it's more than a business. It's much more important than a business. It's recognizing to cut your losses and dig yourself out of a 3-foot ditch opposed to a 6-foot ditch. No pun intended. And that is what it means to be a Jew. And that is what it means to be a mature Jew. This applies to men. This applies to women. Alavai, if we can apply it to our children and teach our children the traits of sincerity, of admitting and apologizing, or even to themselves. It doesn't need to be apologizing to someone else. It could be apologizing to yourself. Or it could be admitting to yourself, more importantly, that you made the wrong choice. That's fine. We're all human. God even gave Paro 5 chances. 5 mega chances. It wasn't a simple decision. We're talking about the whole Jewish nation. God still gave him those chances. But what we want to do is we want to dig ourselves out of that ditch before the velocity kicks up with us. Before that train is going so fast that it's going to take too long to stop. Like what happened with Paro. And like what happens in our lives. Bederech she'adam holech molichin oto. The path that we choose and that we start going in, we are brought in that direction. It's a magnet, it's a fast train that needs to be stopped. This is one lesson I wanted to share tonight from the Zera Shimshon, and I have another one. Paro is getting very worried because he's being warned about the locusts that are about to come. If we go to chapter 10 and we're in verse 7, I'm going to read. This is, I think, one of the greatest turning points and moments in the whole Exodus, episode and story. One of the great turning points is when the sorcerers and the advisors of Paro said, we cannot do it. We were able to fake a stick. We were able to fake the blood. We were able to fake plastic frogs. But we can't make lice. And since then, they gave up the sorcerers. I think it was a little smart because anything they were creating was just making it harder and worse for them. But here's the next turning point, and this one I think is an even greater one. Vayomeru avdei Faro elav. The slaves and the advisors of Paro tell Paro, Ad matai hiye ze lanu lemokesh. How long is this going to be a suffering and a pain for us, Paro? It's already been 7 plagues. Dayenu. It's enough, as we say in the Pesach Seder. Shalach et ha'anashim, send these people already. V'avdu et Adonai Elohehem. Let them go worship their God already. That's all they want. Haterem teda. Whoa. Wait. Who knows what's going to be? Ki aveda Mitzrayim. Egypt is going to be completely obliterated and wiped off the face of this earth. So now Paro's got a problem. Because his ego, as damaged as it was still very strong and he was not going to let go. But now his surrounding, now his support system is coming and they're going against him and they're telling him, you are going to be the reason to our downfall. So look what happens. Vayushav et Moshe ve'et Aharon el Paro. Vayushav, Rashi explains, that Paro quickly summoned Moses and Aaron. Come quick, before it's too late. Vayom, this is prior to the 8th plague, the plague of locust, during the warning period. Vayomer alehem, Paro tells Moses and Aaron, Lechu ivdu et Adonai Elohechem, go serve, go worship your God. Mi vami ha'olechim, but then he adds in, who's got to go? So they answer, Vayomer Moshe. Moses answers, Bin arenu uviskenenu nelech. The young ones and the old ones. Bevanenu ubivnotenu. Our sons and our daughters all got to come. Betzonenu uvivkarenu. All of our livestock has to come along. Ki hag Adonai lanu. Because it is a festival for us to be able to worship and to serve our God. So Paro asks who's going. Moses says everyone and everything. Paro doesn't like that idea. He says, Vayomer alehem. Paro answers them, Yehichen Adonai imachem. What, you think that God is really with you? Kasher shalach etchem metapechem. What, you think I'm going to let you go? You, with your babies and with everything you have? Re'u kira'a neged penechem. The simple interpretation is, Paro says, I know you're trying to pull a quick one on me. You're trying to lie to me. I see your wickedness on your face. You're trying to cheat me. Oh, I'm gone for 3 days to worship God. You think you're going to come back when you have everything on you and you found that inspiration you were looking for? No. Leave something so you're planted and you're grounded here. I want you to have an anchor here in the land of Egypt so you come back. That's the simple interpretation. Rashi says he quotes an amazing midrash. Listen to this. The midrash says, on a deeper level, Paro saw in his crystal ball, in his astrology, as he definitely had and he was connected to, that there's a certain star, and this star's name was Ra'ah, which means bad or wickedness. And he sees this star come up and beat the Jewish people. Beat them in the desert with the spilling of blood, with murder. Paro's telling Moses, what? You think you're going to gain from running off or from leaving Egypt? I see in the constellations, I see in the astrology, I see in my crystal ball that even when you leave, you're not going to make it to wherever you think you're going. Everyone's going to die. I see it in the astrology. And there was some truth. There was truth to that. What happens? Let's fast forward a couple months, and we have the sin of the golden calf. After the sin of the golden calf, what did God want to do? He wanted to destroy the Jewish nation, take Moses and make him the leader of a new nation, of a non-sinning nation. You know what Moses says? I want to read you the verse. The verse says, one second. The verse says as follows. Lama yomeru Mitzrayim. This is the conversation between God and Moses. Lama yomeru Mitzrayim. Why should we give the opportunity for the Egyptians to say, Lemor, Bira'a hotziam la'arogotam beharim, that they were taken out in wickedness in order that they die in the desert, ulchalotam me'al penei ha'adama, and to be destroyed off the face of the earth. But look at the terminology used. Lemor bira'a hotziam. Ra'a is the name of that star. It's the name of that mazal that was supposed to happen to the Jewish people. The Jewish people now, according to God, are supposed to be destroyed and killed. God, Moses, please, if you let the people die now, if you kill all the people now, you're going to fulfill Paro's prophecy. You're going to fulfill what he saw a couple months ago. How bad would that make you look, God? Now, only Moses could speak to God like that. How strong and powerful are you going to look? You made those 10 plagues. You split the sea. You came down to give the Torah, to show your might and power and rulership over the whole world. What good would it be if Paro at the end can sit back and say, I knew. Right, it's not over till the last laugh. Would you want Paro to have the last laugh? Moses tells God. Look at what it says. Vayinachem Adonai el hara'a asher diber la'asot le'amo. And God is consoled on the ra'ah, based on Moses' plea and his convincing point of don't let the Jewish people die, based on that futuristic view that and prophecy that Paro had. So where did it get fulfilled? It gets fulfilled later on when Joshua circumcises all the men before entering the land of Israel. All of the blood spilt then fulfilled that prophecy that Paro had. So just to give us an understanding of exactly what is going on right prior to the 8th plague. Now, what happens? God says, we're going to give the 8th plague comes. The 9th plague, the plague of darkness. Now God has to fulfill the promise he promised to Abraham. He promised to Abraham that he will take them out. But God looks at the Jewish people and he says, what merit do they have? What mitzvah do they have? They're barren of all mitzvot. They were doing nothing. They weren't keeping Shabbat. They weren't circumcising their children. They weren't eating kosher. They weren't doing anything. Oh, sorry. They kept 3 things. They kept their names. Doesn't do much. It's important, but they kept their clothes and they kept speaking their language. Those are not mitzvahs. They're important pieces of identity to Judaism, but they're not mitzvahs. Fine. They were left barren of mitzvot. God looks and says, how am I going to pull them out? He gave them 2 mitzvot. He gave them 2 very special mitzvot. 2 mitzvot which are associated, ironically, with blood. The first, the slaughtering of the Paschal offering, the Paschal lamb, the Korban Pesach. And after they slaughtered the animal in the afternoon, they put the blood on the doorposts, right before the 10th plague. That same evening, prior to the Exodus, God tells Moses, circumcise all the boys. They've been here for too long, now they gotta go, they gotta be ready for Matan Torah, for accepting Torah, they need to be circumcised. Moses was running around all night long, circumcising all the men, all the baby boys, everybody. God said, because of the merit of those two mitzvot that were associated with blood, that is what brought the Jewish people out of Egypt. comes Zera Shimshon and asks a fundamental question. Anyone who knows the basic laws of Brit Milah, of circumcision, if you open even the Shulchan Aruch, in Resh Samech Bet, where he speaks about the laws and the timing of Brit Milah, he says, you're not allowed to do circumcision at night. You can only do circumcision during the day. It's one of the mitzvot that the Talmud in Masechet Megillah on page 20 says they need to be done during the day, ideally from sunrise, but if from dawn it was already done, so it's set and it's good. But the circumcision was done at night. It was done before midnight. It was definitely night. How could Moses go against a basic law of not circumcising at night? To the point where the halakha is even if a baby boy was circumcised on time, early or late, and it was at nighttime, the circumcision is invalid. Question. So the Zera Shimshon dips into the Zohar and tells us something from the Zohar. I want to quote you the terminology of the Zohar. The Zohar says, Hahu lelia de nafku mitzrayim. The night that the Jewish people left Egypt, itnahirat kitkufat Tammuz, that the sun was shining like the middle of a summer day. God did so specifically. Firstly, the reason why was in order to show the compassion and the love of God and the final salvation and redemption, finally them leaving Egypt. God let it be a day. A day is rachamim. A day is mercy and compassion. That's what God was doing. Night is deen. Night is stringency. But according to our question, the Zera Shimshon also answers, since the sun was up and it was daytime, even though it was in the middle of the night, that is what allowed Moses to go around and circumcising all the men and all the babies at nighttime, which was really the day. But why is it that we have to circumcise during the day? Is there a specific reason? Yes, this is one of those famous simple answers. Because God said so. Where did God say so? God says so in Parashat Tazriah. He says, Ubayom hashmini mol besar orlato. On the 8th day, Yom, you need to circumcise the boys. That's it. That's why. From the same pasuk, the Talmud learns the extra hey from hashmini. It should have said Ubayom shmini. Why Ubayom hashmini? Why the, capital T-H-E, 8th day? It should have been 8th day. Why the 8th day? The Talmud learns because even if the Brit Milah falls out on Shabbat, if the 8th day of the baby falls out on Shabbat, meaning if the baby was actually born on Shabbat, so next week, the circumcision overrides the laws of Shabbat and you will perform the Brit Milah on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you're not allowed to cut flesh, you're not allowed to claws bleeding, not allowed to put on bandages and different things like we have to do for Brit Milah. But Ubayom, not only the day, Hashmini, that extra hay is teaching us, on Shabbat, it will also be performed. That's how important Brit Milah is. We're going to end off with a simple question with many answers. We're not going to give all the answers. We're going to give a couple of why specifically did God want us to circumcise our boys on the 8th day after they are born. Listen to a couple answers. First answer the Midrash gives is in order to give the baby strength after they were born. Baby's born. Childbirth is not only painful for mommy, but it's also painful for the baby. They get squashed and crumpled, and give them a little time to eat and to strengthen up. A week later is good. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh adds on that and says, when you have to wait a week, what are you going to go through? A Shabbat. Definitely, no matter which way you cut it. Well, sorry, no, not really. No matter which way it happens. And therefore, the Shabbat, the fact that baby goes through Shabbat, that's going to give him extra strength to withstand and endure the pain of the circumcision. On a side note, that shows us the importance of not only resting on Shabbat, but looking forward to recharging on Shabbat, to gaining the strength for the upcoming week. That's the first answer, to give him time to heal. The next answer given by the Hayei Adam is a beautiful answer. The Talmud Masechet Nida tells us that a baby, every baby, has a personal angel in their mother's womb that teaches them all of the Torah. Right before they are born, the angel goes and hits the baby under their nose, on top of their lip, which is the famous word called the philtrim. Taught you a new word. And everything is forgotten. How sad would it be if you have an angelic chavruta, an angelic teacher teaching you all of the depths and knowledge of Torah, and it's taken away from you? The Hayei Adam says, we give the baby 7 days to sit in Shiv'ah, like he's in Avel, in mourning, before we bring more pain onto the baby. Hazit. Here's another one. The Maharal, which is known for these concepts, says 7 is always within nature. There's 7 days of the week. There are 7 years till Shemitah, 7 times 7 till Yovel. And there's more 7s. 7 is nature. 8 is above nature. It's Me'al HaTeva. What we are requesting, listen to this, have this in mind next time you go to a Brit Milah, because not only is it good for the baby, but it's good if you're a man for yourself, or it's good for your husband and good for your boys. Listen to the following. When we perform a circumcision, we have the intention in pleading to God, God, please allow not only this baby, but yourself if you're a man, or whichever man you're connected to have supernatural, over the teva, me'al teva, supernatural powers to overcome the very strong desire and temptation which stems from that body part, which stems from promiscuity. So we wait to the 8th day, we wait for overnatural, because you do need supernatural powers to overcome those type of temptations. And that is why we wait for the 8th day. That's a very nice answer that the Maharal gives. Now listen to the final answer we'll provide tonight. And this answer, almost all know, but it's important that we repeat it because it's actually fascinating to see the niflaot haboreh, the wonders of our Creator. If you run a blood test on a baby and you analyze certain levels, specifically their level of vitamin K and their level of blood clotting bilirubin, there's a certain standard that by our age, even though there's a vast majority of ages, is pretty normal, pretty natural. When a baby is born, I have to be completely honest, and I'm telling you this because I know, because I am a mohel, so I understand these things. The first day a baby is born, a healthy baby on the first day is just about at 100% capacity and strength when it comes to levels of bilirubin and vitamin K. Similar to our strength now. Let's say now we're holding by 99, 100%. So too a baby at their day of birth is. It drops. Every baby different. Some drastically, some less, some more. It drops. By the 8th day, the baby is over 100% potency and power of his bilirubin count and his vitamin K power to coagulate the blood from the incision. Something which is a one-in-a-lifetime occurrence for healthy babies. That's why only healthy babies are circumcised on the 8th day. So another reason, so we can understand the beauty of God in His creating us, that the baby is circumcised on the 8th day is because the 8th day is a supernatural day. It's a day where the blood clotting and the chances of healing for the baby are supernatural. They're better than normal. They're over 100%. It's not for granted that we're speaking about these topics, especially this topic, during Shovevim. Shovevim is a time of the year which is set aside towards bettering a person, towards coming closer, towards teshuvah, right? Repentance. We had that by Elul. And in the middle of the year, we're around the middle of the year now, God gives us, during the time that we study the stooping down of the Jewish people in Egypt, physically, but more important, spiritually, He gives us an opportunity during their time of rising up, their time of Geulah, of their salvation, of their exodus, to also ride the wave up with Bnei Israel. And Shovevim stands for the parashiot that we read, Shmot, Vayera, Bo, B'Shalach, Yitro, Mishpatim, and this year is one of the special times, since it is a double Adar year. We have not 6 weeks, we have 8 weeks. It's Shovevim Tat. We have Truma and Tetzaveh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us extra blessing, extra spiritual capacities and power this year, with it not being a 6 weeks, but rather it being 8 weeks. But we have to be real with ourselves. What type of teshuvah are we talking about? We're talking about all types of repentance, coming closer to God, through and bettering in the ways of promiscuity, inappropriate relationships, anything that has to be with things we see, things we touch, or we speak about. All of these things, and specifically with male and female inappropriate interaction. This time of the year is the time of the year to buckle up and ride the wave up with Am Yisrael on their way out of Egypt. It's a time where people who are desperate, who are suffering because they're stuck in an addiction or in an inappropriate relationship, that they're able to find within them powers that God gives them in order to rise above and out of those hardships and those trials and those tribulations and that very, very dark hole. So may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us through the study that we learned today of not being stubborn, of knowing that we have the free will, and through the study of understanding this Brit Milah that was done in the middle of the night, which was really the middle of the day, and through the reasons we learned why it's specifically on the day and specifically on the 8th day, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us and bless it, most importantly, our children to be pure and holy and follow in the ways of God through His Torah and His mitzvot. Amen ve amen.
Amen. Thank you.